How's it going, everybody? Comic book artist and writer Will Robson here. This is kind of like, I guess, the third part of this series. It's not really a series, but if you haven't watched my previous two videos, what I'm kind of covering is my journey from being an aspiring comic book artist to becoming a professional comic book artist. So last time we covered my chat with CB Cebulski, where he reviewed my portfolio at London Super Comic Con back in 2016. That went really great. And then that led to me talking to him via email and him eventually giving me a sample script to work on, along with Ricky Purden sort of taking over with looking at my stuff. And if you don't know who that is, he is the talent manager at Marvel Comics. So what happened was I received a script, and it was a script from Spider-Gwen. I don't know what issue it was. What they do is they look at your portfolio and then they try and give you a script that sort of reflects stuff that you didn't necessarily show in your portfolio. And I think that they gave me the Spider-Gwen script because I drew minimal women in my portfolio and I drew minimal superhero action. So I think the script was kind of the perfect thing for me to show, like, hey, I can also do these things as well. It's like I said in my last video, in your portfolio, try and show that you can draw as much stuff as possible, because it will leave Marvel with not having to ask any questions whether or not you can draw something. So the script was written by Jason Latour, and if you'd like to actually read the script itself, it is available on my Patreon along with the high-res scans of the pages that I'm about to show you today. So when I got this script, my plan was I want to prove to them that I am the guy that you can rely on to hit deadlines, because I knew I wasn't the best artist at the time. It was clear from my samples that I didn't really like to do shading because I was kind of scared of it. I didn't like to do huge bits of anatomy because I didn't know what I was doing. There was definite weaknesses in my work. So I want to say, hey, do you know what's not one of my weaknesses? Handing in work on time. So I was really excited to do this script. At the time, my grandmother was away and she let me and my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, live in a house for about a month. And I just locked myself basically in this room and worked on these samples from morning till night. I was really focused and I was really determined to prove myself, because I did not want this opportunity to be wasted. I did not want it to pass me by. So let's take a look at the actual samples that I drew, and I'll give you my feedback now as an 8-year veteran looking back on this. And I honestly haven't looked at these since I did them, so this is going to be really fun for me. Okay, let's take a look. So what I did was I showed off the pencils on one side and then I showed off the inks on the other side, because it's super important to show every step that you're doing, because you never know, you might actually be a much better penciler than an inker, or vice versa, and you may get hired if you're a great inker. You know, they may say, hey, your pencils are kind of weird, but we love your ink, so would you like to ink? And boom, you're in the business. So you should always show every step, never just a final product, because they're not going to know exactly how you got from point A to point B, so it's very important to show them off. So here it looks like we have a 4-panel page. There's a bunch of graffiti that's done. I've written here, spray paint everywhere, maybe webs, question mark. So I think I'm planning out the page. And then I drew a Spider-Gwen sort of in a rough 3D perspective there, and then another panel. So let's see how that turns out in the inks. So there's the inks. Clearly a lot of 3D model used here. I didn't shy away from 3D models back in the day. That was something I like to use a lot. Again, I rarely use the 3D models anymore, but I'm not anti 3D models. So I think this page called for Spider-Gwen doing a bunch of graffiti all over town to attract the vulture, essentially. So I dig what I did with her Spidey sense there in the bottom 4th panel. I think that's a really cool effect. And yeah, I mean, the page is clear, the storytelling's clear. I think she's in a fun position in the 3rd panel, and I like the background people there, so I see nothing wrong with this page. The only thing I see is that there's a lot of 3D models, and again, there's not much in terms of solid black shading, but you ain't gonna find that in my early work. So let's take a look at the next page. Okay, so this one turned out kind of fun. Looks like I was going for a full page splash, and I'm doing something here that I think is actually quite important that a lot of aspiring artists tend to not do, and that is foreground, middle ground, and background. And when I say foreground, I mean like extreme foreground. So if you look at this image, in the extreme foreground, we have a bunch of vultures, right? Like the tops of vultures, and then the vulture is the middle ground, and then Spider-Gwen is in the background. It's so important to have those 3 different layers in your art. I think for a lot of artists starting out, they don't think about those planes and how much depth it can create for your image. So please look at your art. Are you just drawing people standing at the same length, like right shoulder to shoulder, a flat shot? That's boring. You gotta make it exciting, jazz it up. Look at old cinematography. You'll see some amazing examples of using 3 different planes. So again, extreme foreground or foreground, middle ground, and background. Those can be your best friend and make a huge difference to your final product. So we got the splash page here, and then we've got, I didn't really do the rule of thirds back at this point, but I'm kind of using it for this whole entire page, well, the last couple panels. And when I say the rule of thirds, I'm talking about a cinematography technique that's really good at creating a pleasing image to the eye. It's used over so many different films. It's like day one film school. It's great stuff. So I know, I mean, I went to film school. It was probably in my brain when doing this, but at the time I was not actually drawing my panels with the rule of thirds already placed in the background. Something I do today, which I think creates really interesting results. So as you can see, we got the vulture, which it's a pretty cool drawing of vulture. It looks a bit Ryan Stegman there, or Capullo. I think that's a bit fun. And then we've got Spider-Gwen, and then we got him rushing in, and then her jumping out the way. I actually really like this page. I think I did a good job here, which sounds terrible. It sounds like I'm patting myself on the back, but I'm judging this as if someone was showing me their portfolio in the position that I am now, which, you know, I drew this 8 years ago, so it's been a long time. I've learned a lot about art since then. Okay, so let's see the inks here. These inks are not as good as the pencils. I think the pencils really broke this down more in a dynamic way. And here's something I wasn't doing then that I do now, which is when I'm at this stage of the pencils, what I like to do is add an extra layer of spotting blacks, and that's so I can create my positive and negative space. I can see it immediately, because if you see once I go to the next page here, the positive space, like my eye immediately goes to Vulture's arms. It barely goes to Spider-Gwen, who's at the top corner there. There's so much gray on this page that everything just looks a bit blurred, where if I was doing this today, those vulture wings, they would all be black, like the foreground vultures, with a little bit of rendering so that they really break the page up. And the wall that she's on is just so open. I would definitely close that up a bit. So it's kind of a shame, because yeah, I thought the pencils were really good, but these inks are not great. But it's still a very passable page. Again, a lot of 3D models. I mean, look at panel 2 and panel 3. Those backgrounds are just plopped right in there. And even like the focus lines of him moving and everything, I'm pretty sure that's just an effect that I put in there. So I remember I spent ages drawing her pointing there. I never liked the finger that I drew. So that's that page. Okay, up next, I thought I was doing something really fun here with her sort of turning and shooting him in the eyes with her webbing. Again, great use of stuff in the extreme foreground. She's in the middle ground and there's a background behind her. That's great stuff. And I do it again in panel 3 with the layering. Again, I want to push this heavily. Please use those planes. Like, so much that people show me is just like so flat, and it's just so simple just to put something in the extreme foreground and something in the background. So something to think about again. I think this is a really nicely laid out page. I think I wasn't the best artist, right? My figure drawing was fine. My anatomy wasn't very good. My facial structure was fine. Like, I think I did good emotions, but my shading was terrible. My work was definitely made for colorists to do most of the heavy lifting, which is fine, but I knew at the time I was not the artist I wanted to be. I wanted to be doing the heavy rendering like Tom McFarlane and the shading like Greg Capullo. But I think the one thing I did have at this point was my storytelling. I think my storytelling is very clear and concise, and that's something that a lot of people actually struggle with. I like the storytelling here. Everything is flowing and it's nice. Let's take a look at the inks. Okay, good use of negative space there. I'm looking directly at Spider-Gwen in that first panel, and I'm also looking at the vulture there. So I think that turned out pretty well. I don't like the digital brush I use for the webbing. I think that's really lazy, and it just doesn't look good, because if you see like where it starts from her wrist to Vulture's face, it's all the same width, which doesn't make sense because her hand is so much further away than his face. So that creates a real depth problem. And again, I just plopped in a 3D model in the background, so yep, done. I really like panel 2. Panel 2 is fun. I really love the position she's in. I like the explosion. I think it's really fun. Panel 3 is good too. Man, I was using so many 3D models. The laptop, the chair, everything in the background you see there, I guarantee is some sort of model that I downloaded. But yeah, no, I like the storytelling. I like her in the extreme foreground, shooting the webs and catching them in the midground, and the cities in the background. So that, so far, to me, is the strongest page I've seen. This is something I would have definitely put in my portfolio if I was trying out for Marvel. I think it's good, solid storytelling. All right, let's look at the next. Got Vulture flying, and she's connected to him on a web, and there's some vultures flying around. I like the close-up of his face. Again, quite Ryan Stegman-y looking there. And then he swings her around, and then he slices the web. So again, that's really clear storytelling, and that's super duper important. It's an okay page. It doesn't super excite me. I don't like how the first panel is smaller than the other panels. In fact, I would have reversed that by making that a bigger panel, but that's just me nowadays. Let's take a look at the inks. Ooh, dog. Yeah, I remember doing these inks, and I remember struggling doing the forced perspective of Vulture's arm in the first panel. I like the panel. I just think that his arm could have been more towards the camera, more forced perspective, and you could see there I had no idea with the shading and the anatomy, so I just put in a bunch of black lines and hoped for the best. I like the close-up of Vulture there, and the swing around is good, and the snap, like, it's just good storytelling. And I think my portfolio is proving, like, you don't have to be the best at every single thing. If you're better at anatomy, but your storytelling is not that great, you could still get work. Or like me, if you're better at storytelling, but your figure drawing and your shading is terrible, you can still get work. So there's hope, because at the end of the day, it just comes down to editorial taste. I didn't hand this into Marvel and they said, "Oh my god, this is amazing. Well, you're a professional. Come work for us. We need you desperately." That didn't happen at all. All right, let's move on to the next page. But before I show you the final page, I'm just going to take a quick second to say, if you are an aspiring comic book artist, my Patreon might be the right thing for you. I've designed my Patreon to be a great place for aspiring comic book artists like I was when I was trying to get my portfolio reviewed by Marvel. If you want to use the custom brushes and print-ready comic book pages that I use to draw my comics, along with exclusive videos and exclusive posts talking about my behind-the-scenes process of how I create, and high-res scans of all my Marvel and DC work, then please, come and join us over on Patreon. Not only will you get everything for free that's on my digital store, but you'll get full access to my private Discord server where I'm doing portfolio reviews and live art critiques. So if you need professional feedback on your current artwork and help getting your portfolio to the best it can possibly be, then my private Discord might be the most perfect thing for you. I created it because it's something that I would have loved when I was trying to break in. There's nothing better than getting someone looking at your work and giving you feedback, especially if it's someone who is at a professional level. But that's not all. All Patreon members get to read issue 1 of my zombie comic Outbreaks for absolutely free. And if you're not a comic book artist and you just want to support me, then this is the best way to do it. This will support my channel and it will support all the comics that I make. So please check out my Patreon today. So this is the final page. Now, I have to admit, I was pretty burnt out at this point. I was doing a page every day, I believe. I think it took a week to draw this because I wanted to show Marvel that I can hand in stuff quickly, because I knew it was a deadline business, and I knew that I'm not the best at shading, I'm not the best artist, but man, if I'm quick, I might get a job. So as you can see, there's not even a background drawn in because I just knew I was going to find a 3D model. I remember in the script it was Spider-Gwen is just falling towards the city, she's in danger, and she has no webbing, and her phone has an incoming call from her father, which was left behind in some trash. Now, this panel to me doesn't say that she's in danger and falling. It kind of just looks like she's having a good time falling backwards like a spider person does. That's something I would change. Let's take a look what I did in the inks. It looks like I moved her around because I didn't like where she was. And here's a little technique I did that I was pulling her straight up early McFarlane here. I knew this page wasn't very good, but I wanted it to look good, so I just did straight up design stuff, right? I made a whole background of the panel gutters webbing so that, you know, when you look at it, you go, oh, wow, cool, look at all that webbing and stuff. It's like if you look at a lot of early McFarlane, he does so many distracting details to make the page look interesting, and that's exactly what I was trying to do here, because I knew that this page was weak sauce. So anyway, I finished on that one, and that's what I handed in. So those were the Spider-Gwen samples that I did, and I immediately emailed them to CB and to Ricky, but I didn't immediately hear back from them. It was quite a while until I heard from them again, and I will talk about that on my next video, where I go into detail of the time in between me doing those samples and then me eventually working as a professional comic book artist for Marvel Comics. So thank you guys very much for watching this video. I hope you've been enjoying this, and again, if you have any suggestions for any type of videos you'd like to see, please comment below and I'll do my best to make that the topic of my next video. Okay guys, thank you very much for watching, and remember, keep making comics. Alright everybody, thank you for watching this video. If you'd like to follow me on social media, I'm available on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, anywhere there's social media, you can find me. It's usually at RobsonINK, and that's RobsonINK. I've got a Kickstarter. It is coming sometime in April. I'm launching issues 1 through 3 of my zombie comic called Outbreaks, and I've got a super special comic book artist as the cover for issue 3, and my god, wait until you find out who it is. I mean, if you like zombies, you're gonna like the cover artist. I'm also heading to Middle Eastern Film and Comic Con, which is February 8th to 11th or something like that. And I'll be there signing copies of Outbreaks and doing commissions and stuff. So if you're in the area, please come by. I'd love to meet you. And if you'd like to read a free comic by me, you can go to my website, speechcomics.com, where I'm uploading Dead-Eye Dick, which is the backup story of Outbreaks, and that will always be free for anybody to read. And if you want to stay up to date with my work, then please have my website, sign up to my newsletter. So if you want to be there for day 1, which I usually do like a giveaway or something cool on day 1, then please sign up for the newsletter and you'll be notified when I launch. And also, check out my Patreon. We had a bunch of new members sign up because of the last video, and the Discord's been great. There's been people sharing their work in there, and I've been helping them improve their work, and I've been giving them tips on how to get from being an aspiring artist to a professional artist, and it's just a great environment. Okay guys, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.